The Infinite Interview, When Heaven Speaks. Chapter 1. The recorder sat on the desk like a silent witness, its tiny red light waiting to blink to life. The interviewer leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against a notepad scrawled with questions. They were sharp questions, the kind meant to pierce through religious clichés. Why suffering? Why silence? Why so many religions if you are one God? He smiled with a touch of pride. Today would not be like Sunday sermons where preachers avoided the hard issues. Today he would demand answers. But beneath his confidence, a restlessness stirred. He couldn't explain it, a faint hum inside his chest, as if the air itself carried a secret. Then the atmosphere changed. It was not thunder or lightning. No shattering of walls. Just presence. He looked up. And there he was. Jesus sat across the table, as though he had always been there. Not the painted Jesus of stained glass windows, nor the distant figure of children's Bibles. He seemed ordinary and extraordinary all at once, a man, yet more than man. His eyes carried eternity, steady and gentle, yet vast enough to drown in. The interviewer's hand trembled slightly. He pressed the record button. The light blinked. "Thank you for agreeing to this," he stammered. "I have a lot of questions." Jesus smiled. "I know." The interviewer blinked. "I know what you want to ask," Jesus continued, his voice calm but resonant, as if it spoke not only in the air but inside the man himself. "But this conversation is not about questions. It is about you." The pen fell from the interviewer's hand. For a moment, he could not breathe. His carefully arranged thoughts scattered like ashes in the wind. He wanted to protest, to insist that this was his interview. But the eyes across from him held him still, not with force, but with a compassion so deep it felt unbearable. He managed a nervous laugh. "You mean? You already know what I'm going to say?" Jesus leaned forward, resting his hands lightly on the table. "Every word before it forms on your tongue." The interviewer swallowed hard. His chest tightened as if invisible hands were reaching inside, uncovering places long hidden. Tears came without permission. Not sadness, something else. The raw ache of being fully seen. The red light on the recorder blinked steadily, but he no longer felt in control. The interview had already slipped from his grasp. This was not going to be about trapping answers. It was about his soul. Chapter 2, The First Encounter. The man's hands still trembled as he tried to steady the pen. The room felt impossibly small and yet vast, as if the walls themselves had dissolved into the presence before him. Jesus leaned back slightly, eyes never leaving his, and smiled, a smile that carried patience, eternity, and an understanding deeper than words. "I see your questions," Jesus said softly, "but you are not ready for answers yet. You are ready to see yourself." The interviewer swallowed hard. "See myself," he stammered. "I thought this was an interview about you." Jesus' laugh was gentle, almost like a ripple across a still pond. "This conversation is about your soul, and through it, all humanity. Every question you think you have will unfold inside you, whether you speak it or not." He felt a chill. His clever mind, which had plotted every angle, every sharp inquiry, was suddenly irrelevant. Words seemed like fragile boats in an endless ocean. I don't understand," he admitted, voice small. "I prepared. I came ready with." "Prepared," Jesus interrupted, "for an answer you cannot yet receive. I know your thoughts before you speak them, not to trap you, but to reveal the truth hiding in your heart." The interviewer's breath hitched. The recorder's red light blinked steadily, yet it felt meaningless. Nothing mechanical could capture the weight of this moment. He realized that all his research, all his clever arguments, were fragile compared to the presence before him. And then it happened. A memory, unbidden, flooded his mind. A childhood Sunday, sitting in a sunlit pew, feeling small, and wondering if anyone really saw him. He had thought he had buried that loneliness under achievements, debates, and cynicism. But now, it rose again, vivid and aching. Jesus' voice echoed inside him, not just through his ears, but through every corner of his being. I see you. I have always seen you. Tears ran down his cheeks, uninvited. He laughed through them, a laugh of disbelief, shame, and awe all at once. How is this possible? He whispered. Jesus leaned forward, eyes soft yet piercing. Because love knows no barrier, no disguise. I am here to meet you, fully, as you are, and as I have always known you to be. The interviewer's hands gripped the edge of the desk. Every clever question he had prepared was gone, replaced by a raw awareness. He was no longer in control. The interview had shifted, quietly but irrevocably, into something far greater. Something eternal. Chapter 3, Interrupted Thoughts. The interviewer opened his mouth to speak, but the words froze in his throat. Not because he doubted himself, he had prepared every question, every challenge, but because the air in the room seemed alive. I know what you are about to ask, Jesus said again, almost teasingly. The man felt a shiver ripple down his spine. And I also know why you ask it. The words shouldn't have mattered. Yet they did. They unsettled him. They pierced through his carefully constructed armor of intellect and skepticism. He tried again, stammering, but, how? Jesus' smile deepened. Do not speak it. You will see the answer before you can even form the question. The man blinked, heart racing. Something strange stirred in the corner of his vision, a flicker, like light caught between two mirrors. He looked away, gone. He shook his head. I'm imagining things, he told himself. But the prickling at the back of his neck refused to fade. What do you mean? See the answer. His voice was tight, cautious. Some truths cannot be told, Jesus said softly, until they are seen. Not with eyes, but with the mind and heart together. A strange pull came over him, subtle yet insistent. Thoughts he hadn't spoken rose to the surface, old regrets, unspoken fears, childhood memories, and yet before he could fully process them, a vision flickered behind his eyelids, a dimly lit city street, a child alone in the rain, a pair of hands reaching out to him, invisible to everyone else. He gasped, jerking back. What was that? Jesus' voice echoed inside him, gentle but firm. A glimpse. A hint. Not all at once. If I revealed everything now, your mind could not bear it? The man swallowed hard, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Glimpse. Hint. Bear it? Every word seemed deliberate, layered, like a puzzle he didn't yet know he was part of. You are beginning to understand, Jesus continued. The questions you bring are yours, but the answers live beyond the words. And the more you seek, the more you will see, in ways you cannot predict. The room seemed to shift again. Shadows stretched, then retracted, almost as if the walls themselves were breathing. A low hum vibrated in his chest. He shook his head, unsure if it was real, or if he was unraveling. Am I losing my mind? He whispered. Jesus leaned forward, eyes gleaming with a mix of compassion and gentle amusement. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are just beginning to find it? The man laughed nervously, but it was hollow. His fingers trembled on the edge of the table. Every prepared question, every clever angle, now seemed laughably small. And yet, a strange curiosity sparked within him, a dangerous, thrilling pull toward truths he didn't yet understand. Something told him this was only the beginning. Something told him his life would never be the same. Chapter 4, The Vision Chamber. The air in the room thickened, though there was no change in temperature. The interviewer felt it first as a pull, subtle, almost like the gravity had shifted around him. His pulse quickened, a low hum vibrating in his chest. "Close your eyes," Jesus said softly, but the voice wasn't just heard, it was felt, echoing inside, settling in the deepest parts of him. He obeyed, almost against his own will. The darkness behind his eyelids was not empty. Shapes, faint at first, began to twist and shimmer. A street. A forest. A crowd. Faces, unrecognizable yet familiar, flickered like frames of a film. Then a sudden weightlessness. The floor beneath him seemed to dissolve. The walls melted. He was falling, yet not falling, drifting, suspended, untethered. "Where am I?" he whispered, panic creeping in. "Somewhere beyond time," Jesus answered, his voice calm and steady. "Somewhere the answers live, but you are not ready to grasp them all at once. You will see, piece by piece." A burst of light, then darkness. He felt his mind stretch, like a rubber band pulled taut. Memories, fragments of lives he had never lived, swirled around him, ancient voices, whispered prayers, laughter, and cries of children long gone. He gasped. His own childhood flickered before him, then a memory he had buried deep, a mistake, a betrayal, a moment of cruelty he could not undo. And yet, alongside it, a faint glow, as if something had been quietly watching over him all along. Why show me this?" he asked, voice trembling. "To see, not just know," Jesus said. "To feel, not just think. To understand the world as I see it, not through facts, but through the hearts of men and women, through the choices they make, the loves they carry, the sins they hide." The images sharpened, forming a mosaic of life, of humanity, of himself intertwined in ways he could not yet name. A child weeping in a distant land. A mother praying silently by a candle. A man stumbling in darkness, reaching for a hand he cannot see. "Am I dreaming?" he asked, but the tremor in his own voice betrayed him. "No," Jesus said. "You are awake, more awake than you have ever been. Your mind is only beginning to stretch, only beginning to see what is always present." And then, just as suddenly, the vision vanished. He was back in the room, the recorder blinking, the chair beneath him solid once again. His hands shook, his heart thundered. What just happened?" he whispered, voice raw. Jesus smiled, quietly, almost secretly. "You are beginning to glimpse the infinite. But there is much more to see. Patience, and the heart will open." The interviewer swallowed hard, mind racing, questions now meaningless against the flood of wonder and fear. The interview had become a journey into something vast, uncharted, something that promised to change everything he thought he knew about life, about God, and about himself. And somewhere, deep inside, a part of him thrilled at the thought. Chapter 5, Echoes of Scripture. The room felt impossibly quiet, yet the interviewer could hear something he had never noticed before, a low murmur, faint but unmistakable. Words. Verses. Not read, not spoken aloud, but echoing inside his mind, as if the walls themselves carried the sound of centuries. He pressed his palms to his ears, startled. What is happening?" Jesus' eyes met his, serene, patient, knowing. "You are hearing what has always been there. The words you read, the words you memorized, the ones you schemed and dismissed, they are alive." The man's stomach knotted. He could almost feel the syllables, vibrating against the inside of his skull. A verse he had once ignored in youth flickered before his mind's eye, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." He blinked. Nothing had changed, yet everything had shifted. The words were no longer ink on a page, they were living, breathing, reaching for him, pulling him in. "Why now?" he whispered. "Because you are beginning to see, not just hear," Jesus said. To know God is to feel Him in ways the mind alone cannot capture. Scripture is a window, but you must learn to step through it. Another verse rose, unbidden, even the hairs of your head are numbered. His chest tightened. Memories of people he had ignored, mistakes he had hidden, times he had failed, suddenly each became vivid, tender, alive. He could see them through God's eyes, feel the sorrow and love intertwined. He tried to speak, but the words faltered. Every attempt felt too small, too trivial. His clever, prepared questions, the ones he had rehearsed, polished, filed away, seemed meaningless in the flood of this living truth. Jesus leaned slightly closer, a gentle weight pressing into his awareness. Do not be afraid of what you see. Each word, each life, each choice is known and cherished. The scriptures are not a list of rules. They are the pulse of creation, the heartbeat of love, the rhythm of mercy. The interviewer shivered. He felt like a child again, trembling before something vast and unknowable, yet strangely intimate. Each echo, each verse, wrapped around his mind like invisible threads, weaving memories with meaning, regrets with grace, questions with answers he could not yet name. He sat back, mind spinning, heart pounding. A subtle thrill ran through him, fear and awe intertwined. The truths were too big, too beautiful, too incomprehensible to fully grasp, yet he knew with certainty that he had glimpsed something eternal, something that would haunt him, change him, and call him forward. And somewhere, deep inside, a quiet, insistent voice whispered, "There is more to see. There is more to know. You have only begun." Chapter 6, The Sorry. Silence lingered after the echoes faded. The interviewer wiped his face with trembling hands, as if trying to hide the tears that refused to stop. His notepad sat forgotten, the recorder's red light blinked like a heartbeat he no longer trusted. He opened his mouth, but the words tangled. At last, only one surfaced, fragile and unfamiliar on his lips. "Sorry." Jesus tilted his head slightly, eyes soft. "For what?" The man swallowed hard, the knot in his chest tightening. "For everything. For doubting. For pretending. For thinking I could control this moment, that I could trap you in my questions, like you were just another guest." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry for all the years I mocked what I didn't understand. I'm sorry for running, for hiding, for not believing." The confession tumbled out in fragments, like shards breaking loose from a long frozen wall. He felt exposed, foolish, but strangely lighter with each word. Jesus leaned forward, resting his hands gently on the table. "Do you think your sorrow surprises me?" The interviewer shook his head, ashamed. "No, but—" "You are sorry because you are seen," Jesus interrupted softly. "And in being seen, the soul remembers its hunger. Sorry is not weakness. It is the first door." The man blinked, startled. "The first door?" Jesus nodded. "Every heart carries doors it keeps closed: fear, pride, shame, pain. Sorry is the key that begins to open them. Through it, light enters." The interviewer lowered his gaze. "But my apologies feel too small. Too late." Jesus' eyes gleamed with a patient kindness. "Small to you, perhaps. But when a heart bows even slightly, heaven hears it louder than 1,000 shouts." Tears blurred the man's sight. He wanted to argue, to cling to his guilt, but the words dissolved. In their place, a quiet warmth spread through his chest, not the crushing weight of shame, but a release. The recorder still blinked. But for the first time, he realized this wasn't an interview at all. It was a confession, a breaking, a surrender. And though the word sorry felt small, it was carrying him into something immeasurable. Jesus smiled gently. "And now, the doors begin to open." Chapter 7, the door opens. The air shifted again, almost imperceptibly at first. A quiet pulse, like a hidden heartbeat, filled the room. The interviewer blinked, clutching the edge of the desk, unsure if the floor itself was moving or if something within him had begun to tremble. Jesus' eyes never left his. When a heart whispers sorry, he said, the first door opens. Do you feel it? The man hesitated, then nodded slowly. It was not a feeling he could name, not warmth, not fear, not even relief, but something deeper, like a space inside him that had long been sealed was now unlatched. A draft of something vast and holy brushed against him. And then he saw it. Not in the room, not with his eyes, but within. A corridor stretched before him, endless and yet strangely intimate, lined with doors. Some were locked tight, others cracked open just enough for light to spill through. One door closest to him glowed faintly, as if waiting. What is this?" he whispered. "The chambers of your soul," Jesus answered. "Each door is a memory, a wound, a choice, a part of you. Some you guard with chains. Others you pretend do not exist. But every door matters." The interviewer's throat tightened. His gaze fixed on the glowing door. "And that one?" Jesus' voice was tender, almost like a lullaby. "The one that has just opened." He stepped forward, not in the room, but in the vision, and the door creaked wider. Behind it, he saw fragments, a boy crying quietly in a schoolyard, a young man laughing while hiding emptiness, a lonely apartment filled with the blue glow of screens. Each image carried not just sight but weight, emotion pressing against him until his knees buckled. I can't," he gasped. "It's too much." Jesus stood beside him, steady, unwavering. "You are not asked to carry it. You are asked to see it. Only when you see can you be healed." The man's breath came ragged. Shame rose like a tide, threatening to drown him. But even in the flood, he felt a steady hand on his shoulder. He looked up, and the eyes met his again, eyes that held no accusation, only a compassion so vast it undid him. "Sorry is the key," Jesus whispered. "But love is the door itself." The interviewer's tears blurred the vision, yet the corridor and its doors burned into his heart. He knew with sudden certainty, this was not just an interview. It was a journey into the hidden architecture of his soul, a journey he could not escape, and perhaps did not want to. The door stood open now, waiting. And somewhere deep inside, he sensed more would follow. Chapter 8, Escalation. The corridor of doors dissolved like mist, and suddenly he was back at the table. The chair beneath him creaked, the notepad lay sprawled with half-finished questions, and the recorder's red light blinked steadily as if nothing had happened. He pressed his palms flat against the desk, desperate for something solid. I don't understand," he muttered. "Am I dreaming? Am I losing my grip?" Jesus leaned forward, his expression unchanged, calm yet intense. "You are not losing. You are awakening. The difference feels like breaking, but it is the beginning of seeing." The interviewer shook his head, heart hammering. "But this was supposed to be simple. I had questions, real, hard questions. About suffering. About evil. About why you stay silent while the world bleeds. I was ready to corner you with them, to demand truth. And now," his voice cracked, rising. "Now it's me unraveling instead." The pen rolled off the desk and clattered to the floor. His breath came in shallow bursts. He wanted to grab his notepad, to read aloud the clever challenges he had written, but his hands trembled too violently. Jesus' gaze did not waver. "You think you came to interrogate me. But the truth is that your soul invited me here. You wanted answers, yes, but deeper still, you wanted to be known. And being known feels like fire." The interviewer slammed a fist against the desk, startling even himself. "Then give me answers," he shouted. "If you are God, speak. Tell me why children die, why prayers go unanswered, why wars burn while you stay hidden. Tell me why the world feels abandoned." The words burst out like thunder, echoing off the walls. His chest heaved, his vision blurred. Rage, grief, and desperation tangled together until he could hardly breathe. The silence that followed was unbearable. The recorder blinked. Blinked again. At last, Jesus spoke, his voice steady, unhurried, but every word struck like a hammer on stone. "You do not cry for answers. You cry for comfort. You demand explanations, but your soul longs for presence. And until you see the difference, every answer will taste bitter." The interviewer froze, words caught in his throat. He wanted to argue, to deny, but the truth landed with the weight of 1,000 confessions. His outburst had not been about the world's pain, it had been about his own. His hands fell limp on the table. His lips trembled. For the first time, he realized, this interview was not just escalating. It was breaking him open. Chapter 9, The Wound Revealed. The words burst out like thunder, echoing off the walls. His chest heaved, his vision blurred. Rage, grief, and desperation tangled together until he could hardly breathe. The silence that followed was unbearable. The recorder blinked. Blinked again. At last, Jesus spoke, his voice steady, unhurried, but every word struck like a hammer on stone. "You do not cry for answers. You cry for comfort. You demand explanations, but your soul longs for presence. And until you see the difference, every answer will taste bitter." The interviewer froze, the truth lodging deep. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words collapsed inside him. Something deeper stirred, something he had buried for years. "My brother," he whispered, almost against his will. His throat tightened. He was 8. Fever. It took him in 2 days. "We prayed, my mother prayed until her voice broke. We begged God to heal him. And he didn't. My brother died in that hospital bed while I sat there, waiting for a miracle that never came." Tears spilled freely now, years of restraint crumbling. His knuckles turned white against the desk. "And you talk about presence. Where was your presence then? Where were you when we needed you most? Don't tell me you see everything, you didn't save him. You didn't come." The rawness of his confession tore the room open. The blinking recorder seemed obscene now, a mechanical witness to agony it could never contain. Jesus leaned forward, eyes glistening not with distance but with shared grief. "I was there." The man shook his head violently. "No. Don't say that. I was there. I watched him die. You didn't come." Jesus' voice broke, heavy with compassion. "I was there in his last breath, holding what you could not see. I was there in your mother's tears, carrying pain she thought she bore alone. I was there when you clenched your fists, shouting at the ceiling. I did not abandon you, I wept with you." The interviewer gasped, the words colliding with the ache in his chest. His mind screamed denial, but his soul felt the tremor of something true. "You want a world without suffering," Jesus continued softly. "But a world without choice, without frailty, without death, would not be the world you know. Love cannot exist where freedom does not. And so, in the ache of freedom, I enter, not always to erase the pain, but to redeem it. To make even the darkest night carry a dawn you cannot yet see." The interviewer buried his face in his hands. He could not stop the sobs. They tore out of him like storms breaking after years of drought. And through the storm, he felt it, not an answer that silenced the question, but a presence that filled the wound. The room had grown quiet. The notebook before him was heavy with scribbles, answers about pain, faith, wounds, and hope. Still, it wasn't enough. The interviewer leaned forward, his voice tight. You've told me why suffering matters, why love endures, why wounds can heal. But I need more. What is the whole truth? The final answer. Jesus didn't respond at once. His eyes seemed to carry centuries of both sorrow and laughter. Finally, he spoke, slowly. The truth is not a thing you record in ink. It is a road you must walk. The interviewer's pen slipped in his hand. But I'm just here to ask questions. Jesus leaned closer now, his voice dropping to a whisper that felt heavier than thunder. Then let me ask you one, when the truth is shown, will you have the courage to follow it? The question hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The interviewer's lips parted, but no words came. His chest rose and fell. For the first time, it wasn't about the world's questions. It was about his own. The tape recorder clicked, the reel stopping with a sharp snap. The room was still. Season 1 ends, not with an answer, but with a choice.